Hi, and welcome to the HerBusiness Podcast, the show for women ready to grow a profitable business on their terms without the overwhelm or the burnout. I'm your host, Suzi Dafnis, and today we're diving into a topic that, while often overlooked, is pivotal to surviving and thriving in business, and that is the power of intuition. This is a superpower that we all have. You have it, I have it, but if you're anything like me, sometimes you ignore it. I know so many times in retrospect, I wish I'd gone with my gut. The thing is, our intuition is actually a reliable way to make decisions, to know what marketing to do, how to attract our ideal clients, who to hire, what projects to work on. But tapping into this powerful tool as a business resource really takes understanding some of the nuances. That's why I'm excited to have HerBusiness Network member Chanae Carey join us today. She's an intuitive business mentor who masterfully combines practical business strategies with intuitive insights to empower female entrepreneurs. And she specializes in working with smart business owners like you. And in her online bespoke coaching programs, she sucks all the ideas out of busy minds and she maps everything out using a combination of coaching, strategy, and intuition. And this clarity gives Chenae's clients confidence in what to focus on right now and what to put aside so that they have lots of breathing room in their lives. So let's welcome her to the show. Hey Chenae, welcome to the show.
Hi Suzi, thanks for having me.
I'm excited about this conversation. It's not a topic that we dive into a lot, but I think it is one that is really important to not only be having conversations on this show about the practical skills and strategies to growing a business, but also the inner game, what I call the inner game, and that is how we need to show up in our own strength and power to grow the businesses that we want to grow. I'm excited.
Me too.
Alrighty. Now, I gave you a little introduction, but just to bring us to this point, you describe yourself as an intuitive business mentor. You work with women business owners to combine both practical strategy and intuitive guidance to help them run their business and to harness the inner power of what they already know. Let's start by talking about intuition. It's one of those words that we've all heard it, but give us the distinctions that you have on what it is and what it isn't.
Yeah, thank you for asking this question, because I think it's something that if we have a better understanding of, we can then use it more accurately. So I like to draw upon the types of intuition from the HeartMath Institute, and there's three that they look at. So the first one is implicit knowledge. You think about a mechanic. He's done it over and over and over again. A car drives in, he can hear something turning over in the engine, and that implicit knowledge, he knows what it is that is wrong with that car without popping the hood, looking at it. There's that implicit knowledge because we've got those experiences. The next type is energetic sensitivity, and that is because, without going into too much of the science, we are all electromagnetic beings and we're energetically sensitive to others, our environment, things around us. And so, we can sense when we pass someone in the supermarket potentially how their day is going. And the last one, which is the one that I really like and I'm most interested in, is non-local. And this is where it gets maybe a little bit woo-woo, but it's the idea that we can sense and know things beyond our immediate environment, our learned behaviors, our knowledge, the implicit piece. And it allows us to access things far beyond what the cranial brain can understand and appreciate. And that's non-local intuition, as the name suggests.
I love that. And I'm getting I'm very sensory. And even as you're speaking, I can feel that experience of having been in the supermarket or, just seeing someone and knowing where they're at and just getting a feeling for it. And also knowing that when I'm in the flow in my business, there's more than just my brain at work. It's like every part of me knows when something is flowing and knows where something is stopped. And you describe intuition in an interesting way. You talk about intuitive intelligence being our highest form of intelligence. And I think this follows on well with what you just said. Can you speak to us about that, about it being our highest form of intelligence?
Absolutely. So I first learned this from my spiritual mentor, Dr. Ricky Jane Addams, and she talks about intuitive intelligence as the innate intuition that we all have for starters, it's not a special gift bestowed upon a select few that wear crushed purple velvet, for example. And that innate intuition that is available to all of us because it's part of our biology, if we combine that with a sense of trust, which is often the biggest challenge when it comes to intuition for most of us humans, when we put those two together, innate intuition plus a sense of trusting that intuition, that's where intuitive intelligence comes into play. And it's not I'm going to look into my crystal ball or pull a tarot card to have an intuitive experience. It then becomes a living, breathing way of being. And that allows us to access that non-local form of intuition that I mentioned earlier a lot easier, because it's like a muscle, and you don't get the gym membership and then have the six pack. You have to work the muscle and strengthen the muscle. And the same is true for intuition.
You use the term non-local and local, just kind of going off track for a second. Would you just explain those?
Yeah.
I want to make sure the listener understands what you're saying when you say local or non-local as it relates to intuition.
Absolutely. So the local forms of your intuition are the ones that are environment dependent. So the supermarket example, the mechanic example, those things that are in our immediate environment. The non-local aspect, and if you will allow me to go off topic as a little way to explain it, there's a really fabulous study that was done actually at also the HeartMath Institute, and they prepared participants in a practice called heart congruence, and that is that flow state that you mentioned a little earlier. Gets us out of our cranial brains and into what is known as the heart brain. And the heart brain is a cluster of 40-odd thousand neural cells in the anatomical heart, and it is demonstrated to be precognizant. So when I say non-local intuition, I'm talking about that precognizant, that prior knowledge. And they prepared these people, got them into their hearts, that flow space, and they sat them in front of a computer screen, wired them up with ECG, all that sort of stuff. And interestingly, people demonstrated that they were responding to the image that hadn't yet flashed up on the screen. So that prior knowledge, that's that non-local information. Where else are they getting that from? And so when we get out of our heads and into our hearts, we can tap into basically all information anywhere, anytime. There's a big conversation there and we won't go into it today, but that's how people can access Akashic records, which is basically a record of all things that have happened across all timelines in all different spaces. And without that, turning off our very busy brain and getting out of that beta brainwave state, it can be a little bit tricky to access that non-local form of intuition. So the heart comes into it quite a bit, but it's basically, in short, non-local is anything outside of right here, right now that we could possibly sense or detect in our immediate environment.
I love that. And of course, we're going off track a little bit, but that's okay. It's giving us a glimpse into the sort of work that you do. So if someone's listening and they're like, well, I really want to explore that a little bit more, then we're going to give you a little later ways to get in touch with Chenae and work on those sorts of things. As someone who is a big fan of personal development, one of the things that we do inside of HerBusiness, and because you're a member, is as well as providing women with practical strategies like sales and marketing and how to hire and setting up teams and planning and putting in place systems and using the right technology, all those things, we also dedicate space and time to personal development and who do we need to be, about our grit, our psychology, our mindset, all those things. And so what I want to ask you is, because you're working with business owners, and you said this to me before we started recording, and I just think it's so important to put right here on this recording, is what is the missed opportunity in terms of us thinking, well, if I just have the right marketing skills, if I just have the right plan or the business strategy, what is the downside or the missed opportunity of only trying to approach business growth from that perspective?
Well, businesses all start from a human, ultimately. When they go right back to the infancy, all businesses come from a human. And if we leave that human out of the equation, we're missing what I believe is a really key part of it. And so an example that I often share is we could lean really heavily into the intuition piece, or we could lean really heavily into the strategy piece. And I find that a lot of people are tending to lean one way or the other. And what I have found is, for me, my greatest success came when I actually merged the two. I have a very logical and strategic brain, and I also have done a lot of training and work on my own intuition. And all the strategy in the world is missing that you piece, the piece of the business that is the human at the center of it, at the core of it. And being able to access what is available to us intuitively is really important, I believe. On the flip side, you can't sit on a mountaintop and meditate 24/7 and expect your business to grow, to evolve, because there's no action taking. So I think that the intuition piece is the stillness, the slowing down, the receiving, and the strategy is the moving forward, the taking action, that momentum. And for me personally, as I said, my story, my journey, my business exploded when I really harnessed and owned the two of them. And I did practical strategy first, then I tried the energetic stuff, and then I realized I was missing that integration. And when I found that nexus in the middle, for me, everything just exponentially magnified.
And look, I'm sure I'm not the only one who's had this experience where I kind of I have a feeling about something. I kind of know intuitively what my next best move is, but I grapple with it. And sometimes I second guess myself. And why don't we trust ourselves and this inner wisdom, even while it's kind of really trying to come through to us?
A lot of the times it's because we don't have that strength in the muscle, and we don't often practice trusting that. It could be as simple as, Suzi, driving home from a particular destination that is a very regular route, and for some reason you're like, oh, I should turn left here, but always we go straight. And so we follow the norm, and that little nudge gets ignored, and so that muscle deteriorates, and we're looking to strengthen the muscle. So, practice those little, implementing those little nudges and taking them on board is one of those things that is going to strengthen it. But also, to answer your question, the reason why is because we don't want to rock the boat, because a lot of the time our intuition is not going to guide us to do things that are normal, that are safe, that are in our comfort zone. We're often being called to do bigger and bolder things. And that's one of the other reasons that people don't trust it, because they have to get uncomfortable. And I don't know about you, but sometimes getting uncomfortable is uncomfortable. And it's one of those things. We've got to move through that, that diagram it's got the comfort zone at the beginning, and then you have to go through the learning zone before you can emerge out the other end to the growth zone. And I think that fear piece that's in the middle is what stops a lot of people from trusting their intuition.
Yeah, it's like kick yourself. It's like, I knew I should have done that or made that move. And just learning, like you said, to develop the habit, develop the muscle, because it is something that can be learned and honed. And obviously that's what you're helping women do every single day. I would love it if you would give us 3 or 4 practical tips that women in business can use to integrate this powerful and really underutilized tool into their business and incorporate it into their day-to-day work.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that I would suggest is very practical, out of the busy brainwave state, that beta brainwave state, and just slowing down just a little. I love the practice of heart congruence, also known as heart coherence. And it is very much a slow down, take a breath, close your eyes, place your hand on your heart, and bring to mind things that evoke a feeling state of gratitude or joy or abundance, anything that's a lovely high vibrational feeling state. And that helps us to get out of the busy thinking and allow space for that intuition to flow more freely into us. And that's something that works really well for people who are very strategy focused. On the flip side of that, for the people who are very much love the energy, love the intuition, love that spirituality space, my suggestion for people on that side of the proverbial fence is to take a little bit more action, to take 2 steps instead of 1 in any given moment, because that momentum is the piece that's often missing if we tend to identify on that side of the thing, I want to call it a proverbial fence, but it's not really a fence, because you can move on either side and somewhere in the middle as well. And I think that sitting on the middle of the fence is very uncomfortable. Yeah, it's definitely a spectrum. It's definitely a spectrum. And the last thing that I would like to suggest is to remember that ideas don't always equal intuition, because as business owners, we're very creative, right? We're not short of ideas, Suzi. None of us are short of ideas. We're full of ideas. But sometimes our ideas are actually a sabotage, and there is an inkling there that says, do this, pursue this, whatever that might be. but the idea might be coming in to distract us from that thing, because that one piece that the intuition is trying to whisper to us feels a little bit uncomfortable, like I mentioned before. So ideas do not always equal intuition.
This is great. I know that one of the things that inspired this conversation is a short course that you've got that is all about intuition and small business. And we'll talk about that in just a second, because you're going to tell us in a minute, how people can contact you and the way that you work with people. But one of the things that I know you do that I think is fascinating is that you have your content on a platform called Insight Timer. Now, this is an app that I've been subscribing to. You said think, just to get me out of that think space on a daily basis, to go somewhere else, to be able to sort of hear, more of what's coming in. Tell us about your decision to go on that platform, how it supports your business, because I think and how do you stand out in that space?
So it first started, I was actually doing a training in an intuition training. And one of the exercises, the activities, was to build a 10-day course with the intention to get onto Insight Timer. And I did it. I built it. We moved on. It didn't quite make it to Insight Timer. But then 2020 rolled around. And of course, as you know, some of us had a little bit of extra time on our hands in 2020. So I decided to execute that and to put it into action. And there's 26 million users on Insight Timer. It is a massive audience, and it's my kind of people. I don't have to have that initial dip my toe in the water. Is this the kind of conversation where I can talk freely about, those sorts of things when it comes to meditation? And I realized that it was the perfect place for me to start having business conversations with people who are small business owners on that platform. So I started creating content, i.e. meditations, and put those tracks onto that platform and made them available, because the business model of Insight Timer is really wonderful. You can put your content up there, and as people listen to your content, they will pay you a portion of the subscription fees as a teacher for making your content available. And the more obviously content you have, the more you can generate. And my first month after putting that course up that you mentioned was an incredible income generating month for me from Insight Timer. And I love to give to those sorts of people, because I feel like when we talk about the two sides, the people who are on Insight Timer really would benefit from the intuition conversation.
Getting off the mountain.
Exactly. But also, yes, getting off the mountain.
One of the things that I think is fascinating about that model is that one of the biggest problems small business owners have is getting traffic to their offers and finding eyeballs and finding people. And here you are, having putting yourself right in the way of a huge audience. These are, as you said, these are your people. You know who your ideal client is, and there's so much we could say about that. But you've got the eyeballs and the ears right there. So as long as you continue to create relevant content, then someone else is driving the traffic. Someone else is making sure that there's lots and lots of subscribers. I think it's pretty genius. And I wish you well. I know it's a 10-part course. You've done it beautifully. They're very easily digestible lessons. You've really broken it down well. And I listen to a lot of people on Insight Timer, and quite often I would just turn it off because I'm very auditory and it bothers me, but you do it great. You do it really, really well. And I think that's important in an auditory medium like that. Sound is really important. You recently added a new service to your range, which is to help others get onto Insight Timer. Tell us about that, because that's an interesting, cool revenue stream for you.
Yes, absolutely. Whilst I was exploring what other courses I could put onto Insight Timer, I had the genius idea to it was very meta. Could I teach people how to do this for themselves? Now, I can't put that actual course on Insight Timer because they take care of that. So I went about creating my own and published it and put it on my own platform and my own website. So it kind of tackles the two key things that I found were really important for people who wanted to leverage their meditations, their soundscapes, their visualizations, their hypnosis tracks. They wanted to make money off of it. And the first thing was creating a really good quality track. And I self-taught. As I said, in 2020, I had a little bit of extra time on my hands. So instead of delegating and outsourcing, I actually taught myself to produce a really good quality track with a decent microphone in my home office. So I know that there are people who are in that earlier stage of their business who might want to do that, who perhaps don't have the funds to get someone to do a professional editing, to have a recording studio and all of the expense that comes with that. So I include that in the course as well as like a little, if you want it, have it, please learn how to. So that's the first part. It's how do you record a really good quality audio in your home office? And I've got tips and tricks and all sorts of things to do. And then I go into and then what? How do we do that? How do we get that onto Insight Timer? So I teach people how to become a teacher, what that looks like, how they do that, what they need, any prerequisites. And I step them through that process with screen shares, and I do a voiceover to show them how that unfolds and what they need to do to then start generating revenue from that, essentially whilst they sleep, because it's a global platform and people are listening to their tracks anytime
and
of
it's
day.
kind of create once and let it go, right? And that's, I think, the brilliance of it, in addition to what I said earlier, is that you create it, you put it up there, and then it's recurring residual income that just keeps coming to you because someone else is driving those eyeballs. So definitely check out that course. If you don't have Insight Timer, I think I just renewed it like $50 US a year or something like that. Lots of courses, lots of meditations, including access, of course, to Chenae's. But tell us, how else can we connect and work with you? Tell us about the services you offer. And of course, we'll give everyone the contact information. But let's start by saying, like, how do you work with clients?
A lot of people, funnily enough, from Insight Timer come and do my coaching packages. So I do 3 months and 6 month packages, and that's me and them one-on-one, or sometimes two-on-one. They like to bring a buddy sometimes, and that works really well. They get a little built-in accountability buddy, and we meet virtually on Zoom, and then I support them in between those sessions with messenger support. And that package is totally bespoke. So they tell me what they're working on. So I've had people from, I just want to work on developing my intuition and not really lean into the business space, which is totally fine, all the way through to the other end where they really need that practical strategy. And so I'm able to set them up. And one of the best things about it is when I recommend practices to them, I have a whole library on Insight Timer of practices to send them to that I am going to also be paid for when they listen to those tracks and do their homework. So yeah.
Really
it's
great.
Really great.
We're going to put links to in our show notes to all the different places they can find you. Of course, a link to Insight Timer. Before we go, firstly, thank you. It's been such a joy having you here. And is there anything you'd like to leave us with?
Oh, well, I would like to also say thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I think that the key takeaway for me is if we can just have one more person not believing that intuition is a special gift that is not available to them, then, this conversation has done its job. I'm sure it will change the minds and hearts maybe of more than just one person, Suzi, but just know that intuition, whether it's the implicit knowledge, the energetic sensitivity, or the non-local, is available to you. And if you would like to be more intuitive, it's just a practice. It's as simple as getting a gym membership or the equivalent of that.
We got talking about something as soon as we clicked stop recording, and we're just popping it back into this recording because I think it's important. And the question I had for you, Chenae, was how do things like diet, exercise, alcohol, conditions impact our ability to access our intuition? And you started saying some amazing things, and I thought, oh, okay, let's hit record again.
We'll grab a hold of it. Yes, absolutely. So what I was saying is that for me, the further I went into my intuition journey, because I was a total muggle not that many years ago now, and I love that word because anyone who understands Harry Potter goes, oh, I know what she's talking about there. So for me, I found that the further I went with my intuition, with my studies and practicing it myself and bringing it into my life, it became undeniable that I really had to change how things were happening, what my lifestyle was like. So I pretty much ate everything except for gluten. I was a gluten-free diet, and it was very, very, very clear that I needed to change my diet. I now take meat mostly out. I eat a little bit of seafood, but I eat a really heavy plant-based diet. And the reason for that is because the more we explore our intuition and the more we go down that path, we are then looking at our body being the conduit. And the clearer the vessel, the clearer the channel, the easier it is to receive the intuition and to have that clarity. And what I will also say is intuition doesn't have a fuss about it. And what that means is people will always ask me, how do I know if it's my intuition? And so what I will often say to people is intuition lands with clarity, it's calm, and there's not a lot of story. There's not a lot of context, and it's usually just a gentle little instruction. And what often comes immediately after this, and I do a lot of work with the subconscious because it's really, really key to unlocking that flow, that intuition. Because if your subconscious programs are full of negative stories, then what's going to happen is the intuition will land, and almost immediately after, your programming will jump on in and say, yeah, but. And those fear stories and doubts and whatever that might be will jump on in to be part of the conversation. And it becomes very, very difficult to work out what our intuition is because the fear stories, those subconscious programs are jumping on in. So what I tend to say is all we're trying to do is just pull them apart a little bit, make a little bit of space between the intuition and the environment, the people that we hang around with, those physical environment pieces, but also what we're putting into our internal environment starts to become really important, not because it's a prerequisite to being intuitive, but because it just happens that way. I suspect if you went and interviewed a bunch of people who have had spiritual awakenings, most of them will say, I actually really needed to clean up my life a little bit and take care of my physical body, the vessel, that conduit, so that I can be the clearest possible channel.
I'm so glad that we stopped and that we're visiting this, because I think it's a key part. And, if you want to have gluten or alcohol or do whatever you want to do, but know that, I know if I sleep well, the world is a better place. I am a better person. I can, sense more, feel more, think better when I sleep, let alone when I take care of my body in other ways. But I love that you also added that internal sabotage, those internal stories, and how building this muscle is not just a matter of just listening more. There are multiple things that we can be paying attention to really harness what is a really, really powerful asset that we might not be using. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thanks, Suzi.
Thanks to Chenae for a great conversation. I hope you enjoyed that little bonus session at the end. That was me putting the lessons into practice and following my intuition on something I thought would be truly valuable for you. Now, I hope your new insights allow you to see a path to integrating intuition into your business practices and to remind you of your untapped power. Now, please check out Chenae's programs and coaching services on her website at ChanaeCarey.com. To make it easy for you, we've put links to all her contact information over on our show notes page at HerBusiness.com/252. Thank you for listening. I love doing this show for you. If you're inspired to explore your intuitive potential in business, remember it starts with a single step, and that's listening to that inner voice and having the courage to let it guide you. If you're a new listener to the show, welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope you hit the subscribe button so that you instantly get access to all our episodes, and I've got some incredible guests coming up. If you're a regular listener, thank you as always. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would love it if you were to head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating or review, or you can write to me at podcasts@herbusiness.com and let me know you enjoyed the show. Thank you again for listening. I'll see you next time right here on the Her Business Podcast. Bye for now.